Okay, part 2. Yesterday, we finished this to get it up, situated just right. Everything looks still good, pretty, yeah, it's all still pretty good. But now we gotta put the cutouts in. So, last night, I remembered these things called clamps, which will then solve our problem with how we're gonna get these mounted up. I haven't used a belt clamp like this in a long time. So this is for a butt joint. And as you can see,
isn't the rest of the exhaust and stuff like that, or is it just clamped around the...
It's clamped around it, and it allows it to tighten up.
So they're built wrong, we're going to deal with that.
It's not that they're built wrong, but this is going to solve our problem, because this is going to go towards the back side, so it doesn't need to be perfectly sealed. There we go. And then once you lock this up, it creates a really good seal around there, and we shouldn't have to worry about any sort of leaks or it coming loose. On the front, we're going to have the 3-bolt flange hooked up to the main part where it comes off of the intermediate pipe. And for that, we're going to cut up these cutout tubes. You can see, that's just a standard bolt pattern. And the inside hole is 3 inch, so there could be no restrictions on that. Not that it really matters, because the intermediate pipe is 2.5, not 3 inch. But I want to make sure that this flows as good as possible. So, the game plan for the evening is to first cut these off. These were originally tacked on there by myself, so when my brother went to the tuner, he wouldn't have to worry about some sort of weird turbulence going through here, creating more back pressure, less back pressure. But I only tacked it on a couple spots so I could break the tacks and clean them up with the grinder. But the shop decided to fully weld those in.
Thank you.
So first thing I have to do is cut this off, and I'm actually going to cut that off at an angle because this doesn't fit in my bandsaw very easily. And I really don't want to use a Sawzall on this. However, it's going to work to my advantage, because what I plan on doing is taking this piece of U-pipe, cutting it along a line that's going to look something like this, and then notching out the tube to fit perfect. I'm going to do that with a plasma cutter, and then I'm going to put the 3-bolt flange from this onto this, and bolt this up to that, and then I'm going to take this little whatever 15-degree angle this is. I'm going to cut this at a pretty steep angle. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to do it all by eye, but I'll make it work by eye. I'm going to cut it at an angle like that. It's going to match square with this, and it's going to put the tube out and parallel from the muffler, which, if we would look at it like this, more or less, should be more than enough room for the body of the cutout to clear the muffler. I can always trim one piece here, or keep one piece longer as I need it to make sure that's going to work fine. So these are going to come in handy. This is not going to get voided because I'm not going to do any welding on this. I'm going to do clamping on one side and bolting on the other. So I want to first cut this off, cut this cap, then I want to cut this off and clean this up. Then I want to cut the U. Now, the only problem I have with this is the only U we have. So if I botch this up, I'm sort of up shit's creek without a paddle.
Should you just cut the U straight in half? Because you got to do it on both sides, so...
Yeah, I'll first cut it in half, and then I'll be able to take more as I need it. You never want to take off too much. You never want to take off as much as you think you need right away. You always want to sort of finesse yourself in there, because if you do need that extra 1/4 inch, you're not going to have it. I don't want to run into that issue, so I want to leave it longer from the beginning. All right, so as you can see, my problem with this bandsaw is this.
Am I closing this?
No. I'm going to put something on the back side to prevent this from bouncing, because I want to keep this pipe sort of straight. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to get it pretty close. All right, here goes nothing. Now I gotta lift this up. Shut this off first so you don't cut your fingers off. Nobody wants to lose their fingers. My coworker today was actually nice enough to put his finger, his pointer finger, through this, and it ripped off half his nail and most of his fingertip. So be smart. If you can avoid an accident, do so, because if you don't, you're gonna have to go to the hospital. All right, not so bad. I really wish the shop didn't do that, but there's nothing I can do now except for cutting all this stuff off. Now this is garbage. We're not gonna miss that at all. Also, if you ever need a big, aggressive brush, this is a snow brush, or for a car, that broke many, many years ago, and it has been a very faithful friend here in this shop. So don't throw it away if you break the ice scraper. All right. So now that that's cut, it's of course not at a perfect angle, but this doesn't need to be perfect. But now this pipe will go in there. You see there's gonna be a bit of a gap, but I'm gonna just hammer this up to fit. And then if there is a little gap in there, I'll just weld it up. Not so worried about that.
It's not like that's running all the time. It's just for the cutout. So
Yeah, there's not going to be any leaks out of it. I'm not going to cut this up yet because I want to make sure that this tube is perfect first before I go ahead and start cutting this up. So let's start by cutting this in half. That'll give us a little bit less to have to work around when I start measuring everything up. Whenever you're working with a bandsaw, you don't want your guide to be too far away from the piece you're cutting, because if it is, and you're cutting and halfway through your cut, you wiggle side to side by accident, you're going to bend your blade. Very light pressure. When you get to the end, you just put a little less pressure on it. You let the blade cut. Again, you don't want to put too little pressure on it so that the blade rubs, then it'll wear out the blade because it heats the tip up and then it melts it. But you don't want to put too much pressure on there where you jam it and you break all the teeth off. Let the tool do the work. Always try to clean up your area a little bit as you're working, because you don't want to have to go to a machine in particular, or to a table, let's say, and you left it dirty the last time, and you go there to put something down in a quick fashion, and you can't. No one likes that. All right. So now, the hardest part is going to be getting this angle just right. What I'll do, I'm probably going to end up following a line similar to the first one that I drew, but I'm not going to go that far. That line, if I was to continue it straight, would probably end up somewhere around there. Because when you cut it straight, it's not going to follow the radius around like this. It's going to follow it around similar to that. So it's going to take more material off. I'm going to cut it from here. I'm going to leave a little bit of this radius and cut it not perfectly straight back, because this is at a slight angle. This is not perpendicular. I'm going to cut it at a very slight angle back and away. Bear with me, this is not easy to do on a round piece of tubing. And again, once I get that done, I can always cut more as I see fit. So let's do this cut. I want to eyeball it out on the machine. It's a little bit easier when it's sitting flat against something. And again, just let the machine do all the work. Now this is garbage, but I'm not going to throw it away yet in case I need to use some of this radius on a hole that I might have to patch up. So I'm not going to throw it in the garbage. I'll just place it right next to it. But if at the end of the job it is garbage, I'll probably throw it away because a shape like that's a little bit too awkward. All right, so as you can see, I went past the line a little bit, and as a result, it's going way off course. But you got to remember something. This is a round tube. This is now cut flat. So what I'm going to end up doing is I want to notch this tube out so that it'll cradle in there like this. So I'm not going to go any farther on this cut yet. I'm going to now start to notch this and get the angle just right. And if I have to take off the tip because it's not sitting flush like it is right now, so be it. So to do this, you could do this with a mitering tool. You can do it with a hole saw. You can do it with an end mill if you had a big enough one. I'm probably going to do this just by hand, by eye, with a plasma cutter. So this is going to require a little bit of skill and a lot of patience. This is for a later project that I'll be demonstrating the purpose of soon. I'm not worried about scratching this up. That's fine. Keep it pretty straight. This will do just fine. Now, because we have the slight radius here, I can keep it kind of straight with it. Now, all I'm going to do, or at least try to do, is follow the radius of the tube with my marker. That's pretty close. And again, you start with a little bit of material and you can always take off more. Once you get the basic shape, all you have to do is just keep following it and following it and following it until you get it just right. All right. So this is a little Hypertherm, 25 amp machine. The consumables on it are a little beat up, but they'll be more than enough for what I'm going to need to use it for. I'm not going to uncoil it because I just don't want to be tripping on the cord. Don't tangle your cords up. Try to keep them straight and as far apart as you can. So I'm going to keep my ground away from my feet. Put it on the front of this tube.
Where'd you put the compressor on?
20 amps should be more than enough for this. This is not going to take a whole lot of time, but I am going to have to put my respirator on because the last thing you want to do is breathe in any sort of dust or smoke from cutting stainless. The chromium in it is very toxic. So if you can, I have my shop fan on, I have the window open behind me. I'm going to put another fan on to help push the smoke towards the fan and out of the shop. I'm also going to put my respirator on because the last thing you want to do is get sick or get hurt from doing something as lazy as not preparing yourself properly when doing something with caustic materials. Okay, that's not so bad. I have a respirator on, so you're not going to hear me. I'll overlay it. All right, so sorry if you couldn't hear me. Respirators will do that, but they'll keep you safe.
Probably good, you know, you might, if you're gonna do this a lot, invest in a lapel mic to shove in there.
Maybe. So, this is what I got. As you can see, I left it, this line corresponds really close to that first line that I drew, that I was gonna follow. I'm glad I didn't, like I said, I'm glad I didn't cut off any more. I did cut off the tip, so I could jog this a little bit farther forward. This gap, when I cut this, I could always pull this out, or just hammer this in as I start tacking it around. But what this is gonna do, you can see, it puts this pipe really nice and perpendicular, or parallel I should say, parallel towards the outside of the muffler. And what that'll do is, it's gonna keep the cutout exactly where we want it, which I know this is a little tricky to do with only two hands, but it's going to give us a beautiful tight gap to the outside of the muffler, and that's going to allow us to keep this back pipe nice and tight. So I'm very, very excited. I'm not going to cut the length on this until I can figure out exactly how long this pipe has to be from here to get it to line up just right. So before I go ahead with that, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to get just a basic idea of the gap between the outside of the housing and the muffler. And if you want, you can put something under there. I don't know if this is going to be too high. It's a little too high. Beautiful. Adjustable shims will work just fine. Keep a little bit of pressure on there as well. We keep it that far away. Again, I want the body of, excuse me, of the cutout pretty perpendicular to the squareness of the actual muffler itself. But before I go ahead and fully weld this back piece in, I will set it all up, test fit it under the car. If it looks really good, I'll pull it out and then I'll tack it and then I'll do it again. Again, you know, you want to measure twice, cut once. And when it comes to fabricating something, if you're welding, the last thing you want to do is fully weld something just to have to cut it all apart again. All right, so for this pipe to come out that far and allow enough of a flat spot to allow this clamp to get on there about halfway. So, lay this down again. This clamp is going to fully bottom out right around there before it hits the radius. These clamps have to be on a flat piece of tube. About half that is about there, more or less. So that's the minimum length that I need to achieve for this clamp to work properly. Now, I'm only seeing how much room I have to work to cut this. I don't want to leave this too short because I'd rather have this tube be longer if at all possible, because it's easier for me to cut this down to length than it is this. Because again, this tube and the outside and the exit of the cutout have to be perfectly straight. If not, the clamp won't line up, you're gonna have a gap, it'll leak. Not that it's really gonna matter because it's on the exhaust pipe, it's on the exhaust side anyway, but you still wanna get this thing right. So if I was to basically eyeball that up, I have a huge gap from the back of this Y pipe to where it would bolt up with this. And what that's telling me, this pipe has to go farther forward. So this leg will be a little bit longer, so it'll seat in there properly, and then bolt up to the flange just right. And what that'll equate to on this pipe is me just cutting it down little by little. I want to have it so that this pipe, when it has a 3-bolt flange welded onto it, fully bolted to this, has the minimal gap, the smallest gap possible on the outside of this to eliminate having to worry about leaks. You could have probably like a 1/2 inch gap, put a little silicone in there, you'd probably never even know, but I don't want to work like that. So the minimum length is about there. I'm going to cut it about here, and we'll see how far we can get it into the second leg of this Y pipe, this merge, and see how much farther we can go. I'm probably going to end up, just by total guessing here, I'm probably going to end up cutting it around here. Because from what I can see by eye, it'll put this a little bit farther away from the exhaust pipe than the center line of that. So I want to cut it about 1 inch farther back. And again, we can cut this all night long short, but you can't magically make it longer. You can weld it longer, but that's just more work in the long run. That's about 3/4 of an inch or so longer than I thought we would get. We'll see how that looks. This is good pipe, don't throw it away. And all I'm going to do now is just take off this burr on the wire wheel. Do the inside while you're at it. You got to be very careful whenever you're working with abrasive tools like this. Belt sander, grinding wheels, wire wheels. I'll tell you a little story. A couple of years ago, I was working on this. I was working on it real quick, trying to get the job out the door, and I'm wire wheeling a small steel bracket, an L bracket, and it caught and it pulled, and I wasn't paying close enough attention to release it. So stupid me let it go, and I was wearing nitro. I was either wearing nitro gloves or like a soft cloth glove. Shame on me, because what happened was my finger went in and pulled through. I didn't break anything, but it's hard to see, but I lost most of my fingertip over here. Right where this skin is flaking off, I lost a good chunk of that. It grew back. I was very, very fortunate, but I was very, very lucky. Like I said, my coworker today, again, was grinding a small piece of steel, not using a C-clamp, not wearing leather gloves. Even though if he was wearing leather gloves, it probably would have made it worse, or it might have saved his hand, his fingertip, because your leather glove would have gotten caught in there, and it might have hurt real bad, but it might have been enough to stall the machine so you could reach over and shut it off. But his finger went down and through and out, and it ripped a good portion of his nail off, and you could almost see his bone. Safety first. You gotta be safe. You know, you gotta do things quick, you gotta do things right, but doing something right also means doing it safely. All right, so right off the bat, this is gonna have to get pulled up a little bit. I'm just gonna give it a couple of good shots with a ball peen hammer. And then even this tube, because that's egg-shaped, I can egg-shape this. This is why I love bench vices, table vices. They come in very handy. This stainless is pretty good stuff. It will maintain its shape. It'll actually crack before it gives in most cases. Very, very minor pinch on that. And look at that, it slides in there beautiful. This gap in the back, not overly worried about. Like I said, I could always just fill that in. Or I can put the pipe closer to the mouth like that, get a good bead on there and on the top and the bottom. And back here, take my trusty ball peen, give it a couple good whacks, close that gap, and put a nice tight bead around there. All right, so for where we are right now, this is still way too long, but that's okay. We wanted it to be like that. A real quick way of doing this without even having to worry about the cutout is just remember the cutout in this case, or in most cases, is just one solid tube. So just act or just pretend that it's a solid piece of tubing. In that case, wherever the outlet of this tube comes in, the inlet from this tube will come in. I can get in there with some sort of measuring device. In this case, I'm going to use a piece of soapstone. Got about a good 1.5 inches in there. I do have a tape measure, around here somewhere. That's about where that tube's gonna go. Again, I can shift it farther forward, I can shift it farther back, but that's about where it has to be for the cutout to be at a good length. All right, so I was off by 1/4 inch. It's about 1.25 inches from the outside of the muffler housing. Push that off to the side. Take off my gloves because everything slips and slides in these things. We're going to come over here. I want to get it so that it's parallel to the outside of the muffler or really close. And we're at about 1.75 inches. So we'd have to remove enough material for this to come closer by about 1/2 inch. Now, we could just do a real quick drawing on the table, a real rough idea, if you will, and see exactly how much more 1/2 inch would be this way, and then just cut a line, draw a line straight across. So let's do it like this. Need about 1/2 inch. There's my 1/2 inch line. So what is that going to do? That's going to allow me to put this bottom parallel with the table bottom. I'm then going to take the bottom of the tube and put it again towards the bottom of the table. And now this line will be, stop moving. This line will be in line with the tubing where I have to cut it, more or less. I'm going to hope that it's more, so this way, if it is, I can just cut it to be less. Now for this, just take a right angle piece of material, or if you have a little right angle measuring tool or an edge, put it up right against it and mark a quick line. That's a really quick and dirty way of doing it. Now I'm going to have to hope that it's right. Now, if you're scared of cutting this based on an imaginary line or following an end of a tube, what you could do is take some tape. I know I have some electrical tape floating around here somewhere. If not, I might have to go find some. I wasn't expecting to need any, which is why I didn't put it high on my priority list of things to have around me before I started this video. If not, I'll go figure something else out. Yeah, don't mind the mess in this shop. Everything here is messy, but that's just the way it is. I do know where there is some electrical tape though. Actually, that's good stuff. I don't want to use the good stuff on this because you don't need it. So there's our line. And then wrap the electrical tape around and just try to get it to match up as close as you can on the other side. Oh, I hate doing that, but I don't have a razor blade handy. It does look a little cockeyed, but maybe my first cut was a little cockeyed. All right, now you can follow this line with the bandsaw. Glove up, because the last thing you want to do is put your finger into a bandsaw blade. Now, this leg is very short. It makes it a little bit more dangerous to cut with a bandsaw. I want to try to hold this in a position where if I cut all the way through, or if my hand slips, I'm going to go away from the blade, not into the blade. So I'm not going to hold it here. I'm not going to hold it inside because you can't see. I'm going to put very light pressure on the outside with my right hand and the majority of the pressure with my left. Not a terrible cut, not a perfect cut, but good enough. I'll be needing this again very soon. Come back over here and deburr this. Before I even try fitting this inside the merge, I'm going to crimp. What?
Stuff to cut and splice wires.
No, I have it at home. Now, if this isn't enough, I'll go back to it. So it needs to be about 1.25 inches. It's actually a little bit less, but that's because I wanted to put this closer to the outside of the merge. And look at that. exactly 1.25 inches. So this angle, this back piece is ready to go. Now that this is all set, I can start working on the length on this. Again, I'd rather cut this to a size that I know I could work with before I cut the front piece. So let's mock this into position real quick. As you can see, there's a lot of room to work. I have my minimum line. I'm gonna go probably about a 1/2 inch past that, just so I know I'm not gonna have any shortness to it. And then once I get this all cut up, I can get the clamp on there, and then I can start cutting this down. So I already got my line. I'm not worried about making it too cockeyed. Cut it about a 1/2 inch longer to know that it's gonna be long enough. Beautiful. Beautiful enough. Now this is done. No more work has to be done to this tube other than just weld it into place. Shove a rag through there, take off all the oils that might have been left in there. So when I go to weld it, I don't have to worry about the oils melting, burning off, and then causing contamination. I know this is not a very clean rag, but you'd be surprised how much stuff will still come off this tubing. All right. This is the side that I crimped down a little bit. That's gonna go in like so. And that looks like it's lining up really good. Again, I'm not worried about this lining up as well to the cutout as I am worried about the back. So, before I go on with anything else, I need this piece. I want to cut this off on the bandsaw and then hopefully be able to face it on the belt sander and then take this old tube out. Then that tube should be able to slip inside there, and I'll have a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that's going to line up perfectly flush with the cutout. Couple of things to note here. First off, the guide has to come up and the back has to come up. Not a lot, but a little. So let's find a piece of material. It looks like it might work out well. A little bit too low, but I could still use this and maybe thin 1/16 sheet of stainless. I'm not going to be cutting this. I'm just going to be using it as a guide. Yes, that looks like it might do just fine. Yep, that'll be perfect. Again, be very careful how you hold this. I want to hold it from probably the back with my left hand and grab a nice wide section with my right so I can have a little more controllability with it. You can see this is actually chromed. You can see the copper layer under the chrome layer onto the material beneath it. Does this mean this isn't stainless? There's only one way to find out, really. You can only grind it. If it's stainless, it'll have very short red sparks. If it's steel, it'll have long, bright orange sparks. I'm gonna put the cover back, the shield back on this. Make sure you tighten this up a good bit. You don't want this coming loose on you and then digging into the belt. Now how I'm going to do this, I'm going to hold it up, put pressure from the front, hold it from the back. I don't want to put it down low because if it decides to grab and somehow twist, catch inside there, you could break the belt or you could damage the motor. You could also damage yourself very easily. So with this, you got to be very careful that where you apply pressure to it, your fingers are going to be on top of something sturdy. Don't try to do it with just your thumb, because if you put a lot of pressure and it slips, your thumb's going to go right into the belt. Again, this is also going to get very hot. So if it does get hot, I'll put it down, I'll go quench it in some water. I can always come back to it in a little bit after I start cutting up one of the other pipes. Piece is getting very, very hot, which is to be expected. You are grinding it. Get a little hose action on it. I hate how dirty the floor is here. Cool to the touch. The water will now get onto my gloves and keep my gloves a little bit cooler as well. Probably not enough, but I'm going to try to punch this out and see if it'll move on us. For that, I'm going to need some sort of donut, and not the type you eat. We need a hammer and a punch. I'll go with a regular chisel on this. Make sure that whenever you're punching something out, the part you're going to punch out isn't going to be going into a hard surface. It's going to go into a void, so it'll actually move on you as opposed to just, you know, do nothing. Ah, very good. And there you go, successfully removed. The inside we still have a little bit of burrs, some sharp edges from the weld. This is garbage. I'll put that over there for now. I'm going to put this within arm's reach because I will need that again. The hammer can go over there. The chisel I'd rather put it away and know that I put it away than put it somewhere on the table and lose it. Let's see if our tube will fit in there with ease. Yep. Close, but no cigar. So I could go in there with the grinder, but I want to see if I can go in there with a semi-round file and take this off quicker and quieter.
Ah! That bolt found.
Despite the fact that this flange is hard, I do not want to mar it up from the hard jaws of the vise. So I use something called soft jaws. In this case, 2 pieces of aluminum angle iron that were cut down. They come in handy. You could put threads, steel threads in there and not have to worry about flattening them or squashing them or marring them up. They work great. They're worth their weight in gold. Who says you need power tools to do a job like this? You know, everyone says, oh, you need expensive power tools. So a file is usually good enough. You can see the copper under the chrome. That's going to be a problem for when I start to weld this. I'm actually going to probably sandblast this and hope I could take the rest of that off, so when I go to weld it, it doesn't oxidize my welds. Not a whole lot more to go. And now I'll be able to test fit the pipe again. And as long as it fits, even if it fits in there tight, it'll be good enough for me. All right. Doesn't feel like there's many high spots. And there you go. Beautiful. What I'll do is I'll get the tube about halfway through the flange, and that'll allow me to adjust the flange at a little bit of an angle if I need to, and not have the tube go past the face and interfere with either this flange or the gasket. Now that that's all cut up, come over here. Actually, no, I don't need this right now. I need this and this. I also need the clamp. Now we have to figure out how long that has to be. Now I can tell that this is the side that I squished a little bit. That's the round side, but I'll mark this up so I don't have to look at the end every single time as a visual reference. It's gonna go like this, it's gonna go like that. I'm not gonna lock this up all the way, but I am gonna snug it up a little bit so it won't give me a false dimension. Probably snug it up by hand enough. If not, come get an open end and just give it a little bit of a tightening. These Torque-Tite Easy Seal clamps have worked wonders for me in the past, and still continue to give me very reliable and worry-free years of service. They're not that expensive, probably in the area of $15 to $20 a piece. I don't know what my brother paid for them, but they're very well worth it. What? There will be a link in the description, so you could always resort to that. All right, now let's see what this is going to look like. Isn't that beautiful? Gap in there is pretty good. It's probably about 3/8 of an inch or so. If I shove it farther back, it'll actually get a little bit closer. But again, I'm probably not going to go that far back into it. I'm going to put a little shim under here See, now the rubber hanger is perfect. Pull this bad boy back over here. Eyeball it out. Guesstimate that at the very front of this marring from when they bent it will be just about a 1/4 inch longer than what I need it. And again, even if it is a little bit shorter, I do have a little bit of flexibility from the flange. So what I'm going to do now, just eyeball it out. No, it's probably even going to be way longer than that. But again, I'd rather take 3 cuts than one that's too long or makes it too short. I'm going to need this stuff out for the other side. So I'm going to leave it out front and center so I don't have to go scrounging around for it again. I'll sweep all this stuff after I'm done. Again, you don't want to bend your blade. That piece is a little bit too short, or else I would have kept it. So why did I use the U instead of like a 45 or a 15 degree or 30 degree, whatever the hell it is? I wanted this nice sweeping radius. The sweeping radius is what's going to give us the scavenging effect, which means that it's going to create a negative pressure zone outside, out the tailpipe, and it's going to then help suck and pull the exhaust out. Very crucial. If I had just cut a pipe and welded it square like that, yeah, that would still technically work. Would it decrease back pressure and increase noise when you open up the cutout? Absolutely. Would it have been a lot easier to do? Oh yeah, it would have been a cut and a little bit of a cleanup here, like I did over here. But it's not the best way, or in my mind, it's not the right way of doing it. Having this radius in the front is going to help create a nice smooth transition for the exhaust coming out and then back out. This nice swooping long radius is going to be nice for the exhaust to come out here as quickly and as efficiently as possible. You don't want to have too many bends or too many angles or too many hard sections in an exhaust. You lose velocity, and velocity is what makes you power. A lot of people say, oh, I have a 2-liter 4-cylinder. I want to run a 3-inch exhaust out the back. It's going to make the most amount of power. Not necessarily. You're going to lose a lot of scavenging. And because the pipe is so much larger, you have a lot larger volume inside of it. And your engine just doesn't produce enough displacement, doesn't produce enough exhaust for it to really efficiently fill up this pipe. Not only that, but it's going to cool. The exhaust pipe will not get as hot as if it was a smaller pipe, let's say 2-inch. And what happens when gas is hot? It expands. It expands, yes, but it's also lighter. It's lighter and thus it moves easier. When you have a heavy gas or cold air, the air moves a lot slower. And when you have an engine that wants to build power, you want that exhaust to move fast. You want it to be hot. You want it to flow out the back of the car so hot and so quick and so smooth that it doesn't have time to cool off inside the pipe. So for a 6-liter car like this one, a dual 2.5 would have been fine. Would you have lost power with a dual 2.5 versus a dual 3-inch? That's negligible, and one that you could only really solve on a dyno. But we are where we are, and we're going to make it work. All right. So I'm going to try to slip this into place and see what we got working. Look at that. almost perfect. I'd say another 1/4 inch off this, and we're gonna be right as rain. Don't forget, I could also cut the back of this a little bit more if I have to, so I have 2 places to cut a little more material off of. I don't want to cut it off the back of this too much more, even though I wouldn't mind bringing this outside diameter, the housing of the cutout, closer to the muffler. But I know I have so much room under this car that I don't mind it being a little farther away, because it'll prevent this from getting even hotter from the muffler. Negligible at best, to say the least, but I like how this looks.
The motor being farther away is almost more important.
Yeah, I want the motor to be farther away from the exhaust, as far away from the heat as possible, because this will be the thing that wears out the quickest.
Up away from water too.
Yes, up away from the water. There's a bigger void over here than there is over here. Over here on the, this is the driver's side, you have the tub for your spare tire. So, do I cut this? Do I cut this? I don't like this gap in the front, and for me to eliminate that, I'd have to shorten this tube a little bit. That'll bring everything a little bit closer, farther out this way. And I'd rather do that and eliminate this than have to fuck this up anymore. So that, I'm gonna call done. This is gonna come out, and then we're gonna cut this. Okay, dilemma. This is even smaller than it was the last time we cut this. Correct. What are you gonna do? Well, I'm not gonna be stupid enough to try to hold it back here to cut off a 1/4 inch worth of material. But I am stupid enough to try to hold it one-handed while cutting it with a piece of wood. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do a little bit of a magic trick here, which involves technically 3 hands, which I only have 2. But one of the hands will be vice grips. Because if I run a pair of vice grips into the blade, not much is going to happen in the far of a negative effect. More than tight enough. What I will do is guide the wood against my sternum. A little bit of a tricky move here, but I'm experienced in the ways of absolute retardation at its best. So I'm going to try to cut off about 1/4 inch, but I know I have more room to work with than that, so I'm not overly concerned. My left hand is just going to try to keep the rotation of the piece to a minimum. My right hand is just going to try to keep it as straight as possible. Notice that I put the wood in line with the blade. If I put it over to one side, it's going to want to twist. Put it right in the middle, it'll keep the pressure exactly where all the cutting force is. Oh no, I cut my favorite piece of wood. I don't care, it's wood. We get pallets all day long. I still have all my fingers. I cut it a little cockeyed, but it's going into a back of a merge, so it doesn't really matter. That goes in the garbage. The vice grips go away. The machine gets cleaned. That's already off. We're gonna just clean this up real quick again, and we're gonna see how good it fits. A lot of people come up to me and ask me to quote a job. They say, hey, how much is this gonna cost? Or, hey, how long is this gonna take? And it's not as easy as you might think. Someone might say, hey, weld this pipe for me, or cut this bracket for me, or machine this bushing for me. And every single job is different. There's no two ways around it. One person will have a job that might not be as difficult as another one, and someone else might have a job that would require something like this. A lot of going back and forth. This is a completely custom job. The only one of this car I'll probably ever make. And the issue with that is, it's all custom one-off componentry. There's no jigs that I have to make this really easy for me or allow me to you know, put my guy on it and say, hey, weld this up. It's not that simple. It's not that easy. This is a very complicated piece to make. And that's because it requires so much cutting and modifying and welding, and taking off the weld and cutting it again, making it work. Because everything about this is difficult. And everything about this is unique. And you pay for that. You pay a premium for something being unique. My brother could have bought a car or bought a full exhaust that bolted up to it.
Honda Civic.
But it wouldn't have been his car. It would have been someone else's car, because someone already did that. Or it's on somebody else's car.
Cook's wanted $1,000 for the axle backs. Fuck Cook.
Cook wanted way too much money for basically this with a muffler in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, if all I did was this tube, a muffler, and a nice single exhaust out the back, or even a dual tip out the back, in parts, you're probably talking about maybe $200 a side on the very high side, and a couple hours putting it together. That doesn't equate to $1,000, but it still equates to something.
This does.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking perfect. The gap in the front is very minimal, easy enough for me to get in there with weld. The top, again, I'm going to hit this down with my ball peen, make it nice and tight. The back sits flush against the tube, and the gap in the front is perfect. If it was any tighter than that, I'd actually have to cut it down a little more, because then it wouldn't allow me to have the flexibility with the flange to tweak it just right. So, what does that mean? That means that now I can get all this into position, and I could mark the front to cut this tube to fit this. So, yay, we're not out of the woods yet.
Are you doing that under the car? Or
No.
what point were you putting this shit under the car?
Everything the way it is right now looks like it's going to bolt up just fine. So I'm going to take, actually I can't take this off yet, because now I have to mark out this tube. I am going to remove this. I'm going to have my brother hold the back of the tip so it doesn't slide forward.
Holding it away? Or am I holding it?
You're holding it away. Now this is where it really gets finicky, because this cut has to be perfect. And you'll note I can't even get the bottom, but for right now it looks pretty good. That
Now you
can
can rotate the tube, right?
Yep, that can go over there. This is actually going to go into my vise. I'm going to leave the soft jaws in it for now, because I'm going to hold it up so I have a little more room to mark around. I don't have to worry about bending this pipe or kinking it, because this stainless is very rigid. I'm going to line this up as best I can. Right around there. Notice that I'm going to put this line closer to the inside, because again I can just knock this tube inwards to close that gap. Follow this all the way around. Now I mentioned earlier that this is very, very critical and very important. It needs to be perfect. It does, but we can still leave a little bit of a gap here and there, because again, I'm MIG welding this, I'm not TIG welding this. What's the difference between MIG and TIG? Expect that in a video later on down the road. But for right now, MIG is a whole lot faster, just as good for exhausts like this, unless you're making a really high-end custom exhaust. This is just, you know, it's late, I'm exhausted. It was 90 something today in New York,
87.
and I just want to go home. It's already 7:30 and I'm not even done with one side yet. So I gotta go get my respirator on and plasma cut this. All right, so this is all cut. Everything looks pretty good. A little bit larger of a gap than what I wanted, but at least this way I don't have to worry about cleaning up the inside of the tube to get this to fit. Looks like it fits in there pretty good. Again, the gaps inside are going to get fixed with a hammer. Any gaps either in the back or the front are going to get filled in with weld. I could even get the inside of the tube from the front with weld, so I'm not worried about that at all. So now comes the time of setting this all up, getting some tacks on it, and throwing it in the car to see what we got. So you got to remember to put this in here. That's going to be important. That's going to get bolted up to the cutout very soon. So right now, see how close we got it. This cutout starts getting a little heavy after a while, but I think we'll manage. And that's, come on, about where it's going to be. I'm going to get this thing bolted up in a little bit. Throw, like I said, a few tacks, and we'll be ready to go. I'm not going to use their, actually, I can use their bolts.
Better, I found that last one. It was a miracle. Fucking miracle. Christmas miracle.
The reason why I wasn't going to is I thought they were using lock nuts. They're using scaled nuts, which are a form of lock nut, but they're not a pinched lock nut, meaning that they're not going to lock up on the threads, they're going to lock up on the face of the flange. These are 9/16. I don't have to put all three, but I probably will anyway. Come on, there you go. I'm not going to bother with the gasket. The gasket's not going to put that much in there, and I could always take a little bit of space out of there. I also don't want to cook the gasket if I was to do a couple of tacks, because as hot as an exhaust might get, it's not going to get red hot from welding. Even though this piece won't get red hot with the cutout there, because the reason they don't want you to weld on the cutout itself is because if you put a bad ground on this, electricity arcs from one side to the other. What's going to happen is the plate that's in here that opens and closes it is going to get it's going to get grounded out too, and it's going to fuck it up. And if it fucks it up, or if there's any little slag that builds up as a result, the door won't open or close. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but having a good ground is very important. Probably the most important thing. All right. Just snug these up by hand. That looks pretty good. The gasket will take up the rest of that gap. That looks pretty good. And even that looks pretty good. I'd rather have the gap towards the front. I'll put tack over here and a tack probably over here, someplace easy where I could access it, so if I have to break it to put another one on, I can. All right, let's set up this welder really quick. Today's welder is going to be a Lincoln Electric 140. This, as opposed to the other welder, is running a 023, actually no, I believe it's 025 stainless steel wire. The one yesterday was running an 030 wire. Reason being, well, that's all I had available to me. Today I'm at my shop, so I have access to slightly better pieces of equipment that make my life significantly easier. I was contemplating trying to do this in my friend's garage yesterday, and that idea quickly went out the window when I realized how insanely difficult it would be. So our 75-25 mix is just over 500 psi, which is fine. There's a cute little baby wire. Yep, 025, 308L SI. I'm going to run a couple of sample tacks like I did yesterday. For that, I'm going to need a sample piece of material. And ironically enough, I have tons of it. So this is off that wide degree and off the back, and this is off the front. I'm going to tack them together and see what they look like. Now again, you want a good ground. So try to put the ground on the piece that you're working on. Weld is on. That's going to be way too high. That's good, that's good. Again, I'm running a Miller Performance helmet. This is my first one. It's many years old, probably about 9 years old now. It's a little dirty. I have to get new lenses for it. I forgot to order them. And this should be good enough just to get a good idea of what we're looking at. All right, purge it. I don't hear any gas coming out. That's because the regulator was turned all the way down. That is why you test your aren't you supposed to check your optics, Michael? All right, so we're all set. Everything is good. It's splattering a little bit, it's pushing a little bit. So it's one of two things. Either the wire is going too fast or the amperage is too high. So I'm gonna lower down the amperage because this is 0.25. It doesn't require a lot of electricity to melt. It's pushing a little bit, so now I'm going to slow down the wire speed. And again, I'm listening for that sizzle. Now the wire speed's a little bit too slow. I've never welded with 0.25 wire in this machine, so this is a little bit of a learning curve for me. There we go, perfect. Nice and bright red, but that means we're gonna get penetration, but again, you don't wanna get the stainless too hot, because what it's gonna do is gonna burn out all of its very important properties of corrosion resistance. Looking good, Billy Ray.
Feeling good, Lewis.
All right, so the ground is on the piece. I'm going to tack it over here, the ground here, then I'm going to move the ground over here to tack it here to avoid having the ground pass through this. I get this into pretty good position. That pipe is probably inside this flange just enough. Front pipe is pretty good. Back pipe is pretty good. I'll let the front hang because I'm going to have to adjust that later. That small tack is probably enough for me right now, just so I could get it in position and then rotate it if I have to. For this, I need both hands to hold this. There's no magic wood trick I could use for this. All right, I'm going to tack it towards the front, because again, if I have to break the tack, at least there I can access it. But I do have to get it just right. So.
Got your hands up or no way?
No, I got it. I'm just gonna have to look away. Nope, I missed. There we go. So this is not tacked enough to the point where I could go test fit it on the car. Far from it. But it should be enough that I can rotate it just a little to see what we got on the bottom. On the bottom, we got a little gap over here. Pretty good on the back side. That's acceptable. And on the front, actually technically the back of it, it's coming up a little bit, which is hard to tell from the front. But I think we'll be okay, because like I said, we have tons of room around this cutout. All right, so I'm gonna stop playing with it. I'm gonna get this back into position on the front. I'm gonna put another tack back here. Good. Don't forget to move your ground. Should be able to let this sit down without causing much damage. I'm not worried about that gap too much, but hammers work wonders. It's been a very long day, so pardon my atrocious tacking skills today. Now I'm not going to tack this into place yet, but there's very little wiggle room in there, which is good because I want to make sure I have enough room in here for the gasket. All right, so I'm gonna probably do another tack in the back. I'm gonna pull it nice and tight to minimize the gap. There we go. And voila. This I'm going to leave loose, so if I feel the need to turn it in or out to make clearance under the car, I can. I am going to need a light and some cardboard under the car, so if Z would be so kind, I'm going to remove the ground and the power cable out of my way so I don't trip on it. All right, now it's time to see if all that work went into something productive and useful, or something utterly and totally useless and worthless. So I'm going to put this on under the car for right now. I have to go get the gaskets and the hardware. I could probably do without the gaskets. I don't like taking gaskets in and out of cars too much, because if you damage them, you're going to be left out without a gasket, and you're going to have a very annoying farty exhaust. And I don't know of anybody that really cares for that all too much. Get that out of the way. Danger. All right, let's go see what I can do. Dreadlight TM. All right, so you'll notice that the hanger for the intermediate pipe is off the car, at least for right now. Reason for that is I didn't like how flexible it was. I'm going to try to reinforce it before we go ahead and finish this car up tonight. And then I also have, ironically, from my Camaro, 2 new mounts that are a lot more rigid than the ones that were here, so it should help eliminate a lot of this wiggle. All right, so we're going to get this hopefully seated in this mount nice and easily without crushing my face. Okay, that's in. And now all I gotta do is put some bolts in there, and we can check our clearances. I think we're just gonna have enough room, which I'll be very, very happy about. Not to mention, I do believe the exhaust is slightly over to the passenger side, but I'm not gonna bank on it.
About an inch.
About an inch?
About an inch too close to the passenger side, yeah.
Well, like I said, I'm not gonna bank on it. I'm not gonna touch something until I know that I can touch it, which means it's not scalding hot right now. I'll do without the lock washers. Zila, can I get 2 9/16 or, I mean, 2 14mm wrenches? The ones I was using before, please?
On the bench?
Yeah, on the bench. Alright, this is gotta go up, and it's got to twist up. There we go. Try to get it on there as much as possible by your hands. This way you don't have to worry about turning a wrench as much.
Oh, my bad. Here.
Thank you.
The Honda Accord is bedazzled by it.
What?
Bedazzled by the Honda Accord to go from.
Was it blue?
Yep.
A blue coupe? Yeah,
Rims.
it sounds really good. And it's a 6-speed too.
Would have open headers and cutouts?
Probably.
I doubt it. Whoever does, they ain't like this.
It sounds excellent though. I see that car every day. I don't know who drives it, but I want to give him props because it's one of the best sounding Accord V6s I've ever heard. It's not loud and ricey. It's got a beautiful tone to it. Okay, so let me back out of this place a little bit. Get a better look at what we got. So here was my mark that I put on here yesterday. I wanted to try to keep it within. I completely disregarded that because I needed to get this pipe just right in the front. As you can see, we have about a fingertip's worth of clearance between the housing of the cutout and the heat shield to the tire tray. Everything looks like it's going to fit beautifully. I don't think there's going to be any sort of clearance issues. And again, if this does get shifted over outside a little bit more, it's going to give us even more clearance. So
Yeah, she definitely needs to go over at least a 2-inch.
I love it. It looks so perfect. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to probably put the gasket in here just to ensure that I know I have enough clearance for it. And then I'm going to tack everything up a little bit better. Do all my hammer and dollying to everything to make sure there's as little gaps as possible. And then we're going to weld this bad boy up, throw it back in, and hopefully get out of here before 11 o'clock tonight.
Oh, do the other side.
All right, let's get this ball going. All right, so before I go ahead and finish this, I'd really like to get the intermediate pipe mounts put in. So let me show you what's going on with those. These are the original ones, and these are two that I had, actually no, not that one, that one's messed up. These two I had in my toolbox. So as you can see, the original ones were nice and soft and very squishy, allowing the exhaust to move a lot.
Allowing the exhaust to fall off the fucking car.
These, which are probably still made of rubber, are much harder because they're brand new. Whether it's because they're new or not, I don't know, I don't care, but they're gonna be a lot better than what was in there. So I'm gonna put these on the car. However, this mount is flimsy as shit, and I'm gonna reinforce this before I put it back on the car, because I don't want these little tack welds or these little tabs ripping off the car. So what am I gonna do? Very simple solution. There's a single bolt stud that comes to the back and a single nut that bolts this onto the differential holder on the rear subframe. I have no way of doing a piece on the back or reinforcing it on the inside, because you can see the diff section is pretty wide on this, and I don't want to run the risk of having any interference issues with the back. So a simpler solution, I'm going to take a piece of flat steel, probably not this, but as a quick guide, I'm going to put a piece in between here with a hole over here for the stud to pull through. There's plenty of threads coming out the front of the nut, so I'm not worried about that. And I'm going to put a notch over here, a notch over here, so it'll slip inside. I'll weld it around the tubes and a couple tacks on the face, and the stud and the nut will keep it nice and secure. So let's go see if I can find some material that will be a little bit better suited for it than that. I know I'm gonna have to cut it and plasma cut it, but I don't want to have to cut down the notches. That is too small. You'd be surprised what you can find in the garbage. even though I know I'm probably not going to find anything useful in here. No. That would still have to get cut down too much. I'm not going to do anything bigger than 1/8 inch because it just doesn't need it. Plus, I also don't have that much space. So we're going scavenging here, scavenger hunt. One of which I think I'm going to come out empty-handed on. A little unfortunate, but hey, that's how it goes. I thought I had some small scrap pieces hanging out here, but if anything, I'll use that one. I'll use that piece. All right, I think it's gonna be just easier and faster for me just to cut that up, which is usually the case, I find, in most shops. You already have a piece, why not just use it? Unless, nope, too small. But I gotta cut this down anyway. And this is a little bit easier to hold. So I'm not gonna go much farther past the bottom where the old hangers are. But I am going to go a little bit wider. I'll cut it real quick on the bandsaw. I'll notch it real quick. I'll sandblast it real quick. And now I'll paint it real quick. So it's 4 inches center to center. I want it to go out about halfway through that. So I'm going to make it about 4.5 inches long. I'll keep it to the inside. I have to make sure I clear the stud, at least to there. And I'll go to the bottom of the plate, so I'll make it 2 inches high. Again, this is a very rough template, but I'm going to make it work. Nice and quick, you'll see. Soapstone is used for more than just marking, it's also used for guiding. Cut this out, come back over here. I'll notch it with the plasma cutter. I'll sandblast it. I'll tack it in a couple of spots. I'll give it a quick coat of paint so it doesn't rust, and we'll be off to the races. Quite literally, because that's what we're doing on Sunday. Alright, so first I'm going to do the notches for the hangers, and then I'll do the hole. I'm just going to mark where, right about where center is. I gotta keep that kind of straight. That looks pretty decent. That's close enough. Doesn't have to be anywhere near perfect. That's 4 inches between centers. So it's going to go to about there and about there. All right, plasma cutter time. I do not need the soft jaws for this part. And this is going to be a very quick and dirty way of doing this. I could go as far as bring upstairs to my milling machine, but again, I just don't have the time. It's already after 8 o'clock, and I have a whole lot more work to do. Cutting steel is nowhere near as toxic as stainless steel, but you still want to have some fresh air blowing in your face. Not too shabby. It'll also, when I go to tack weld this, I'll put this in the vise, squeeze everything together so it's nice and straight, and then I'll put a couple of tacks on the inside and on the bottom. I could have left this alone, but that would have run the risk of having the exhaust fall off, or worse, that cracking and then putting stress on the rear hangers or on the front hangers, causing something else to fail, and you just don't want to deal with that. Plasma cutters supercharge, superheat the air that flows through it with electricity. There's some sort of, not photosynthesis process, but I'll call it photosynthesis process because honestly, the process is a little alien to me. But it's very cool stuff, and it works great. What?
Photosynthesis is trees.
I know, that's why I was saying that. Because I don't know, 100% to be honest. The trees are alive, they're talking to me. Clean this up a little bit on the belt sander again. All right, now this is all set, and it looks like, hold on, gotta get the size right. Nope, damn it. If I looked at it for more than a half a second, I would have figured that one out. Now it looks like it's gonna work out just fine. I have a round file for the inside hole. As I thought I had a round file for the inside. Ah, yes I do. Most of the files are upstairs, but c'est la vie. All right, beautiful. Let me go sandblast this piece real quick. I'll put a couple of tacks on it. I'll put some paint on it. I'll let it sit. I'll start welding this up in the meantime. And when that's done, I'll put this in. Bada bing, bada boom. And it's all set. This won't take more than a couple of seconds to strip off. This paint doesn't seem to be on there all too well, and I'm running aluminum oxide 36 grit, which is fairly aggressive. But there's a lot of humidity in the air, so what that does is causes the blasting media to clump. I'm only going to clean it where I'm going to be welding. Oh yeah. All right, fuck it. Hold your breath when you go in there. Don't breathe that dust in. I have a problem with rust. If I see it, I don't like it. It's had some rust on it. This is some pretty good stuff. This Kimball Midwest Pro Shot. I know I have an air nozzle around here somewhere. Aha, my Typhoon. My trusty Typhoon. This is without a doubt one of my favorite blowers. The only thing that sucks about it, you can't put it up to a nozzle and fill something up with it because it works as a Venturi. But plenty of power. Why did I put gloves on to sandblast this piece? Well, inside those gloves on the blasting cabinet are, well, they're not very clean. I'll just leave it to you like that. All right, figure this out this time. I'm gonna put this in the vise, put a couple tacks on the bottom, tacks on the side, maybe even a couple tacks on top, leave the stud to go through the middle and clamp it down, but you can see that gap. Don't like that gap, got to eliminate that. First things first, done with, again, with this plasma cutter. But unplug it, it does have a slight leak coming from somewhere. This is gonna be perfect for what I need. I need one more for the back. Just a big old plate of steel will do. A little too big. Perfect. Almost perfect. Need a second one. Now I have to hope not to drop anything while I go to clamp this together. See how much that's pulling. You can see how off these are. I'm going to get an adjustable wrench on that, tweak it just a little bit. I also want to bring this back up like that. Perfect. Center it a little bit. Oh, beautiful. Come on. Again, I just don't have enough hands, but no more gap. It's actually straightened that out pretty good. I gotta lift it up though, so this way I can make sure it's not hitting into the top of the vise. Yeah, it's actually pretty straight. Yeah, but that's very straight. Excellent. So this is steel, not stainless. And even though I could weld this with the wire that I just welded the exhaust with, I'm not. That's just because I try to do things right. And sometimes it takes a very long time to do things the right way. Get this ground cable out of the way. While I'm here, I'll unplug this. When you unplug an extension cord, don't pull it from the cord, you're gonna break it. Pull it from the socket. Or the terminal, whatever you want to call it. I can only turn left, even though that was a right turn. All right. This is another little miller. This is a 140. T as opposed to the 140C that I was just welding with. This cord never gets wrapped up right. Come on. All right, there we go. Gas is on, weld is on, ground is on. I wanted to go close my helmet. I'm not wearing one. I could actually lower that amperage down a little bit and the speed. Grab my helmet and see if I can show you guys a little bit. Is the gas on? Ah. The tank was on, but not enough to let gas flow through. That's why it was welding like shit. Much better. Very difficult to see. If you tack it very quickly like that, you don't have to worry about blowing the metal out. You can get a nice little bead like that. Yep, that hole's a little off. Oh well, I think I'll be alright. I have a round file with this thing's name on it. Ground on it like that. So I put a couple tacks. There's still a little paint, too much paint over there. Oh yeah, very bad to be welding next to aerosols of any sorts. Sorry, OSHA. Yeah, I don't think this thing's gonna flex anymore. It might not look pretty, but never judge a book by its cover. And a mother will always love you. God willing, if you have a mom. Starting to get the hang of this one now. It unfortunately takes me some time if I'm jumping around. I'm not going to bother welding the backs because the front's going to be more than enough. Alright, I'm going to blow this off, get it hanging, shoot it real quick with some spray paint. We'll be good to go. I'll put this back away, shut it off, close the tank, disconnect the power cord again, grab it from the end of the cable. Try to leave this in as big a loop as possible so you don't kink the guide. Ground cable is not as finicky. I'm going to push this out of the way. That's out of the way. Not my finest work. I'm not very proud of it, but by golly, it's going to be a fuck ton better than what it was. Going to clean up that little bit of an overhang. There isn't much there, but if that bolt, if the tolerance between that hole and that stud are tight, it won't fit. Try not to burn my hands too much. I love a good file. A nice sharp file will cut through anything you need. All right, I love this stuff as well. TIG rod. This is 16th aluminum, and it is great for doing stuff like this. It's usually very inexpensive. You can buy it almost anywhere. I'm sure there'll be a link in the description. But you can use it for making hangers for just about anything you like. While the piece is hot, the paint will bake onto it. It'll adhere very quickly. And you should have no worries of this stuff rusting for a while. No need to prime with this stuff because it goes on and it clings to the surface of the material really well, especially since we sandblasted it with such an aggressively coarse media. It leaves a really textured finish and the paint adheres to it great. If I did use primer on it, it would be that much better, but as of right now, it's going to be a whole lot better than what it was. We're gonna have to hit the grating on this plasma cutter table, and down we go. Beautiful. I put it on nice and thick. This paint loves it. It doesn't run. It doesn't glob up. It just sticks. I think that's going to be pretty good. It's going to look beautiful, and it's going to work even better. Paint will go out of the way of harm's way. All right, this table is getting too dirty for my liking. Battery pack can definitely go into the safe box with my respirator. I'm gonna need the hammer. Don't need the bolts, the shims, which were a job for somebody. Just made a couple extra by accident, but they work out well for doing exactly what I use them for. Get all this stuff out of the way. This pipe we're gonna need, but not right now. This one can go away. Beautiful. These are gonna be going in soon. These, stop doing it. Stop saying these. Those can go over there. I'm gonna be using a little bit of this on both sides of every gasket. I really hope I have enough. This high temp silicone is very good. If it was any closer to the header, I'd be using the copper gasket maker. But I don't have any of that right now. This is all garbage. I can stay off to the side. Punch. In the punch drawer, it's also garbage. These tools can go back there. The file, I'm done with it for right now, so it goes away. Clean area, clean mind, less stress. All right, these tacks should hold. I'm just gonna start peening this back into position before I go ahead and pull off the cutout itself and get the gasket in there. I don't want to damage this, so that's why it's going to be in there for now. But I am going to put it in there to at least tack this up. Then once everything's tacked up, the cutout's going to come back out. I'm going to do a complete weld of it. Hope that nothing tweaks too much, and we'll be good. So I'm going to use the bowl side of this hammer. You can see how much that gap's already closing. I'm not going to go close it on one side and then start working it around. I'm going to work it around the entire side and then go back to it. Because if you close it over here and then open it over here, it'll push back out. Yes, over here will be much more difficult because it's right by some weld, but I'm going to do the best I can. Whoops. This area in the middle is going to be very difficult, but I'll be able to build that up fairly easily. Is it going to be pretty? No. Is it going to work? Yes. So again, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Does it make me happy? Absolutely not. But unfortunately, it was just a circumstance that I had to deal with, but it did allow everything else to get put in place where it needed to be. What I'll end up doing is I'll tack it over here where the gap is pretty close and then start working it over here because as I start going deeper on this, it'll start to pull back up. As for over here, the same thing's gonna happen. I'm gonna put a block under here, so this way it doesn't have, I'm not rocking the entire exhaust, I'm keeping the power concentrated on where I'm working. A nice big block too, some aluminum. Beautiful. Not too bad. That's a pretty tight gap. And that's gonna be good enough for me to weld. This side, however, did open up a lot more than I was expecting it to. And hey, you know, this happens. Unfortunately, I don't do this every day, but I do it, and that's why I'm here doing it. So if anything, I'm gonna have to tack the front, and I can probably go in there with a small screwdriver and pry it out a little bit to close the gap even more. And I'll just tack it and just keep on building up a couple of tacks until it's completely sealed. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, put the gasket in, get some other areas tacked up, and then I'm gonna get hopefully some pretty good video of me doing some welds. And if not, then I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna have to do to make that work sometime. All right, so this gap was unexpected, and that happens. Life happens, you know. We just gotta deal with it. There's nothing you can do. You can scream and cry about it all you want, but at the end of the day, you still gotta take care of business. So, this is a pretty big gap, about 3/16 to 1/8 inch. You could fill this up entirely with a MIG gun, but it would take you a very long time. You burn a lot of holes. So, you take this stuff. This is 1/8 stainless steel TIG rod. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it in there, just like so. And I'm going to tack it and just keep tacking. And this will prevent me from burning through. And it'll allow me to fill up this gap. It's stuck in there. It'll allow me to fill up this gap quickly and efficiently without burning through the inside too much. Everything else is coming together pretty good with the exception of back here. There's a little bit too much porosity inside the merge. I got it closed. It's not pretty, but unfortunately,
I don't require pretty, it's fine.
This is gonna work out just fine. So I'm going to first put this in the front and I'm gonna tack it. I'm not gonna put it all the way in the tube because I don't wanna get it stuck inside. I'm gonna give it a quick buzz. Melt it through it. And now that it's in place, I'm going to tack it over here, and I'll tack it towards the back. Just a small, quick tack. It doesn't require much effort, much heat.
You gonna cut that or just tack it in place? I'm
going to tack it, and I'm going to get it hot enough that I should be able to just pull it away. Should being the key word here. Just like that. And then what I'll do is I'll tack it in the middle and work my way from end to end, going back and forth, not to get it too hot and burn through it. Okay. This is not the first one, this is the second one. I got the first one all together, I welded it up, I got it good. It moved on me a little bit in the middle, so the pipe didn't fully line up. I was able to straighten it out and it worked out pretty good. But ultimately what had happened was I didn't lock up this 3-bolt flange tight enough when I was tacking it together. My mistake, it happens. But I learned from it this time, and I had no issues with this one. It flew together. It took about 40 minutes start to finish. I just gotta double check, make sure everything's fully locked up, and then I'm gonna throw this under the car. We're gonna wire them up and see how well it works. Hopefully it won't leak too bad. You'll also note that this cut over here is much more shallow than the other one. This one I was able to work on the bandsaw a lot better, get a better hold of it. As a result, there was a much smaller gap when I shoved this tube in there. I got much tighter welds on there. This came out pretty good overall. This is a little bit of silicone, don't mind that. Overall, it came out very well, very good. I'm very happy with it. It definitely looks great. Clearance issues under the car, there are none to speak of. As long as there's no extreme exhaust leaks out of this, I'll be very happy, and so will my brother. The only reason why I use silicone on this is because this tube I had come out of the 3-bolt flange through the gasket and very slightly into the cutout, and I couldn't do any welding to the inside of it like I did on the other one. That was by total mistake, but it actually worked out to be really good. It kept everything nice and straight and true, and when I bolted it up, it was smooth sailing. So I'm just making sure that this band clamp is ready to rock, and we're just about there. The nice thing about these, you could lock them up as tight as you want, and there's still a little bit more room to go. I also faced the flange on my belt sander to ensure that it has a nice flat seal on there, so everything should be 100% perfect on this. This one, I might just get a little tweak too. All right, let's go install this thing, get it bolted up, start it up, and then I can clean up and go home. If I can get home for 11:30 tonight, I'll be very pleased. All right. So I got new hardware, all grade 8 with lock nuts.
You may have just put
I don't have any pinch lock nuts. They're just nylon lock nuts, but they'll work fine for this. It shouldn't get too hot to the point where it's going to melt. And you know what? They're easily accessible enough under this car that even if they did have to get replaced or snugged up at some point later on down the road, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Whoop, yep, I totally missed that hanger, and I totally just smashed the GoPro. Alright, I gotta take this off for a second. Alright, so I had to get in there and really snug my head up in there, but I got it. That's all sorted. No, you didn't. Alright. That's just one of those nights my brother forgot to put the gasket on either side of the exhaust, which is fine. I'm under here. I also need the wrenches.
You don't need the hardware anymore, or just new hardware?
I got the new hardware.
Alright, I'm taking off the old hardware.
Alright.
I'm like, yeah, this is everything.
Bolt in. Bolt in. Let me get the wrenches and the other gasket. Alright. Lock nut on there, a lock washer, and then a lock nut. I really wish I had a better style lock nut. This will do for right now. Thank you. Okay. The only thing that's going to suck about the lock nuts is they're a little bit hard to put on. It takes a little more wrenching to get them tight, but they should hopefully prevent this all from falling down under the immense vibrations. What?
I'll push the exhaust where it needs to be over here.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm going to start it on.
It's all right.
It'll work. Hold it here.
That's, you can go a little bit more. All right, I got to rotate.
believe it. Mine's waiting way too far anyway. Somehow.
Okay, there we go. So let's go on the other side. Where's the gasket?
Well, I guess it's on this side right here.
Let me get it. Hand it to me. Thank you. All right. So plug this side in. This is all going to be temporarily wired into the trunk for now. Yeah, it's in. Real quick, if you can see, here's that bracket that I fixed with the new hangers. Almost no movement now. A lot less than what it was before. They were jiggling around like I can't even tell you. This is much more rigid. This will never work. We'll never have to worry about this breaking. If this breaks, something else broke significantly worse. All right, so let's come over here. Crack these loose.
All right, listen for a second. Nothing?
Do it again.
You'd be hearing them if it was working.
Yeah, nothing. You go to just jump it.
Good.
All right. Well, he's dicking around with that. Try to keep everything where it's supposed to go. Are you jumping it?
I'm going to have to jump it directly. Which side is which?
I had the bolts coming through on this side, on the other side. So that's exactly what I'm going to have to do here. Go. Coming in. Watch the holes, praying. There we go. I love these gloves until they stretch, but I've been wearing them for like 6 hours. Why'd you do that?
I wanted to...
Yeah, I know what you wanted to do, but why'd you do exactly what you did, exactly when you did it? You couldn't give me like another half a second to get this nut on?
No. It also needs to come back about an inch.
Okay, give me a second.
I'm just...
You fucked this up.
Everything's got to be known to everyone all the time.
Pull it back up. Straighten it out. Other way.
What do you mean? This way?
Yeah, don't move.
That one was a pain in the ass. I had to lift the entire thing up.
I don't want to cross thread this because then we're not going to have a good time. All right, that's on. Did you jump it closed yet?
I was going to check it. I actually got my little sheet. Yes, this one's closed. They should both be closed unless I accidentally this one. They are both closed.
Okay. All right, hold up the tip. Get it lined up.
Yeah. It's got to come out. Well, actually, how the fuck did I do this?
Are you good?
Yep. So I did it before. I just shoved this in here and then tightened it up. And hold it.
Let me get the other box wrench, please. Actually, no, hold on. I got it.
All this car needs the Night Rider lights behind the rear mirror.
All right. I'm coming out.
That's perfect.
All right, start it up. So it's still going to be loud. Hey, they look really centered too.
Don't thank me, thank the Lord.
Side more than the driver's side, but I'll live with it. That's a bigger difference than I thought it would be. Some revs? You know, I'll do it. Safe to say that they work. They work very well. I honestly don't hear any sort of leaks. Not that I would anyway, because of how loud this thing is. But these mufflers do a much better job of quieting this car down than we first realized. I think it came out excellent. All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. If not, Don't watch.